The tramp was missing, continued the man in the corner, and Mr. Francis Howard tried to find the missing tramp. Going round to the front, and seeing the lights at number 26 still in, he called upon Mr. Shipman. The jeweler had had a few friends to dinner, and was giving them whiskies and sodas before saying good night. The servants had just finished washing up, and were waiting to go to bed. Neither they nor Mr. Shipman nor his guests had seen or heard anything of the suspicious individual. Mr. Francis Howard went on to see Mr. Ferdinand Knopf. This gentleman was having his warm bath, preparatory to going to bed. So Robertson told the detective. However, Mr. Knopf insisted on talking to Mr. Howard through his bathroom door. Mr. Knopf thanked him for all the trouble he was taking, and felt sure that he and Mr. Shipman would soon recover possession of their diamonds, thanks to the persevering detective. He, laughed the man in the corner. Poor Mr. Howard. He persevered, but got no farther, no, nor anyone else, for that matter. Even I might not be able to convict the thieves if I told all I knew to the police. Now, follow my reasoning, point by point, he added eagerly. Who knew of the presence of the diamonds in the house of Mr. Shipman and Mr. Knopf? Firstly, he said, putting up an ugly claw-like finger, Mr. Shipman, then Mr. Knopf, then, presumably, the man Robertson. And the tramp, said Polly. Leave the tramp alone for the present since he has vanished, and take point number 2. Mr. Shipman was drugged. That was pretty obvious. No man under ordinary circumstances would, without waking, have his keys abstracted and then replaced at his own bedside. Mr. Howard suggested that the thief was armed with some anesthetic, but how did the thief get into Mr. Shipman's room without waking him from his natural sleep? Is it not simpler to suppose that the thief had taken the precaution to drug the jeweler before the latter went to bed? But wait a moment, and take point number 3. Though there was every proof that Mr. Shipman had been in possession of £25,000 worth of goods since Mr. Knopf had a check from him for that amount, there was no proof that in Mr. Knopf's house there was even an odd stone worth a sovereign. And then again, went on the Scarecrow, getting more and more excited, did it ever strike you, or anybody else, that at no time, while the tramp was in custody, while all that searching examination was being gone on with, no one ever saw Mr. Knopf and his man Robertson together at the same time? Ah, he continued, while suddenly the young girl seemed to see the whole thing as in a vision, they did not forget a single detail. Follow them with me, point by point. 2 cunning scoundrels, geniuses they should be called, well provided with some ill-gotten funds, but determined on a grand coup. They'd play at respectability, for 6 months, say. One is the master, the other the servant. They take a house in the same street as their intended victim, make friends with him, accomplish 1 or 2 creditable but very small business transactions, always drawing on the reserve funds, which might even have amounted to a few hundreds, and a bit of credit. Then the Brazilian diamonds, and the Parisians, which, remember, were so perfect that they required chemical testing to be detected. The Parisian stones are sold, not in business, of course, in the evening, after dinner, and a good deal of wine. Mr. Knopf's Brazilians were beautiful, perfect. Mr. Knopf was a well-known diamond merchant. Mr. Shipman bought, but with the morning would have come sober sense. The check stopped before it could have been presented, the swindler caught. No. Those exquisite Parisians were never intended to rest in Mr. Shipman's safe until the morning. That last bottle of 48 port, with the aid of a powerful soporific, ensured that Mr. Shipman would sleep undisturbed during the night. Ah! Remember all the details, they were so admirable. The letter posted in Brighton by the cunning rogue to himself, the smashed desk, the broken pane of glass in his own house. The man Robertson on the watch, while Knopf himself in ragged clothing found his way into number 26. If Constable D21 had not appeared upon the scene, that exciting comedy in the early morning would not have been enacted. As it was, in the supposed fight, Mr. Shipman's diamonds passed from the hands of the tramp into those of his accomplice. Then, later on, Robertson, ill in bed, while his master was supposed to have returned. By the way, it never struck anybody that no one saw Mr. Knopf come home, though he surely would have driven up in a cab. Then the double part played by one man for the next 2 days. It certainly never struck either the police or the inspector. Remember, they only saw Robertson when in bed with a streaming cold. But Knopf had to be got out of jail as soon as possible. The dual role could not have been kept up for long. Hence the story of the diamonds found in the garden of number 22. The cunning rogues guessed that the usual plan would be acted upon, and the suspected thief allowed to visit the scene where his hoard lay hidden. It had all been foreseen, and Robertson must have been constantly on the watch. The tramp stopped, mind you, in Phillimore Terrace for some moments, lighting a pipe. The accomplice, then, was fully on the alert. He slipped the bolts of the back garden gate. 5 minutes later Knopf was in the house, in a hot bath, getting rid of the disguise of our friend the tramp. Remember that again here the detective did not actually see him. The next morning Mr. Knopf, black hair and beard and all, was himself again. The whole trick lay in one simple art, which those two cunning rascals knew to absolute perfection, the art of impersonating one another. They are brothers, presumably twin brothers, I should say. But Mr. Knopf, suggested Polly. Well, look in the trades directory, you will see F. Knopf and Company, diamond merchants, of some city address. Ask about the firm among the trade, you will hear that it is firmly established on a sound financial basis. He. And it deserves to be, added the man in the corner, as, calling for the waitress, he received his ticket, and taking up his shabby hat, took himself and his bit of string rapidly out of the room.